They say silence speaks louder than truth, but hers was the kind that kills it. The night she accused me, the world stopped moving. Her eyes, the same eyes that once searched my soul, now trembled with rage and betrayal. She didn't wait for an explanation. She didn't even ask. She just said, "You disgust me." And I watched her walk away, under the same rain where I once promised her forever. The irony? I never cheated. The woman she saw me with wasn't a stranger. It was her twin, the sister she never forgave, the one she pretended didn't exist. When I told her the truth, she laughed. "You expect me to believe that?" That laugh haunted me for years. It was the sound of someone who'd already chosen the story she wanted to live in. So I gave her what she wanted: distance, silence, and a wedding invitation. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it's poetic. And when she opened that envelope and saw her twin's name written beside mine, she realized what betrayal truly felt like. I didn't marry out of love. I married out of memory of what love once looked like before she destroyed it. But the cruelest part, somewhere deep down, I still waited for her to ask, "Why her?" And I still don't know what I'd say. The first time I saw her, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at a painting. Two women stood frozen on that canvas. Identical faces, opposite emotions. One smiled like she had found peace. The other cried like she had seen the truth. I remember the soft hum of the gallery lights, the faint smell of old paint and polished wood. People walked around us, murmuring about technique, color, composition. But she didn't move. Her reflection in the glass caught mine, and for a moment I thought I was looking at a memory I hadn't lived yet. Then she spoke. "Maybe we all have a twin inside us," she said quietly, eyes still fixed on the painting. "One who loves and one who ruins." Her voice wasn't loud. It was the kind that forced you to listen, like a whisper that cuts deeper than a scream. I turned toward her. She didn't smile, didn't even glance my way. She just kept looking at those painted women as if they were confessing something only she could understand. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Because sometimes, words destroy the magic silence builds. So instead, I said, "Which one do you think you are?" That made her turn, and when she did, the world rearranged itself. Her eyes, sharp yet soft, studied me for a long moment. "Today?" she asked. "I think I'm both." She smiled faintly, almost like it hurt. Then she walked away, her footsteps echoing like raindrops in an empty hall. I didn't know her name yet, but something about her left an imprint. Not like a stranger you meet and forget, but like a dream you wake up remembering in fragments. For days, I found myself going back to that gallery. Not for the art, for the hope that she'd be there again. And she was. She always stood before the same painting. Sometimes she'd tilt her head, as if waiting for the figures to switch expressions. One day, I finally asked, "Do you come here often?" She laughed softly. "You sound like a cliché." "Then maybe fate likes clichés," I said. She glanced at me, that same unreadable expression flickering in her eyes. "Or maybe fate's just lazy." That's how we began, not with sparks or confessions, but with small conversations between silences. We became familiar strangers. She'd talk about colors and emotions like they were people. I'd listen, pretending I understood art when, really, I was studying her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her fingers lingered near her lips when she thought deeply. Her name, I learned one quiet afternoon, was Lara. "Lara," I repeated, tasting the sound of it. "Like light." She smiled. More like a shadow, pretending to be light. That was the first time I realized she didn't hate herself, but she didn't fully forgive herself either. There was something broken in the way she carried peace. We began seeing each other outside the gallery. Coffee shops, rainy walks, late-night phone calls that always ended with her saying, "Don't fall for me." I laughed it off then. Too late, I told her once. She went quiet for a long time before replying. Then don't blame me when you regret it. I thought she was joking. But even jokes can be prophecies when spoken by the right person. I remember the first time I touched her hand. It was unintentional. Our fingers brushed as we both reached for the same coffee cup. Her hand froze, trembling slightly. I pulled away, murmuring an apology, but she caught my wrist instead. Her skin was cold, not the kind of cold that comes from weather, but from fear. "Don't apologize," she whispered. "I just forgot what that felt like." "What?" "To be touched like I'm real." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just held her hand tighter. And for a moment, she let me. That night, as I walked her home, she stopped in front of her apartment and said, "You see too much. Maybe you're just not used to being seen." She smiled. That same sad smile I was beginning to recognize as her armor. Maybe. And then, without warning, she kissed me. Soft, hesitant, like someone testing whether love was still safe to believe in. When she pulled back, she whispered, "If I disappear one day, promise you won't chase me." I thought she was being poetic. I didn't realize she was being honest. Loving her was like holding a candle in a windstorm. You don't notice the burns, you just keep shielding the light. She wasn't dramatic, never jealous, never demanding. But she had a habit of vanishing. Mid-conversation, mid-promise, mid-moment. Sometimes for hours, sometimes days. When she came back, she'd bring me small things. A sketch, a pressed flower, a photograph of the sky, as if these were apologies she didn't know how to say. Once, I asked her why she kept running away. She looked down, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "Because love makes me look like her." "Who?" She hesitated. "No one you'll ever meet." But I did meet her, eventually. I just didn't know it yet. One evening, I went back to the gallery alone. The painting was gone, replaced by something new. A single woman standing before a shattered mirror. Her reflection fractured into 1,000 versions of herself. The plaque read, "The twin I buried." Something about it made my chest tighten. The brushstrokes, the way the woman's eyes looked half alive, it felt familiar. I stared at it for what felt like hours until the curator walked by. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "The artist dropped it off this morning. Laura Bennett." Laura. My Laura. But the name felt heavier now, like I had been loving only one half of a story. That night I went to her apartment. The lights were off. I knocked once, twice. Finally, she opened the door, her face pale, eyes rimmed red. "You painted that," I said. She froze. "You saw it? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not a painting," she said softly. "It's a confession." I didn't understand. She turned away, clutching her arms. "I had a twin sister," she said, voice trembling. Her name was Liana. She was everything I wasn't. Wild, reckless, loved easily, trusted too fast. One day she fell in love with someone who broke her. She blamed me for not warning her. We fought. She left. Her voice cracked. A month later, they found her body by the lake. The silence that followed was unbearable. "She drowned herself," Lara whispered. "And I've been living with her reflection ever since." The pieces fell into place. The painting, her fear of love, the way she looked at me like I was temporary. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of becoming her. For the first time, I saw her cry. Not the delicate kind, the real kind. The kind that makes you want to rewrite the world just to make it stop. "I see her every time I look in the mirror," she said, trembling. "Sometimes I think she's the one people fall for, not me." I reached out, wiping her tears with my thumb. "I don't love her," I said. "I love you." She shook her head. "You don't understand. Loving me means loving the part of me that ruined her." "Then let me," I said. Let me love both." She looked at me, truly looked, and for the first time I thought she might let herself believe me. But belief is fragile. And she had a way of breaking beautiful things before they could break her. The next morning, she was gone. No note, no call, nothing. Just the scent of her perfume lingering on my pillow, lavender and something faintly metallic like rain on old steel. I searched for her for weeks. Visited the gallery, the park, the coffee shop. Everywhere I went, the world seemed quieter without her. Then one day, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single photograph, the painting of the twin I buried. On the back, in her handwriting, "Don't look for me, I'm still learning which twin I am." No signature, but she didn't need one. Sometimes I wonder if that's how she wanted to be remembered, as a question, not an answer. The gallery replaced her work months later, but I still go there. The curator knows me now. She doesn't ask questions. She just nods as I stand in the same spot, staring at the blank wall where the painting used to hang. And in that silence, I imagine her, somewhere far, maybe painting another reflection, maybe learning to forgive the woman she sees in the mirror. Love changes form when it ends. It doesn't disappear. It becomes something else. A scent, a place, a painting you can't stop revisiting. Lara taught me that. She also taught me that not all mirrors are meant to reflect. Some are meant to reveal. And maybe that's what she was for me. Not my reflection, but my revelation. If I close my eyes, I can still hear her voice, the first day we met. Maybe we all have a twin inside us, one who loves and one who ruins. Now, years later, I finally understand. She wasn't warning me about herself, she was warning me about me. Because in loving her, I became both. It happened on a day that didn't deserve meaning. Overcast sky, lazy afternoon, the kind of day you forget as soon as it ends. But I remember every second of it. Because that's the day I met her. The mirror that moved, the reflection that spoke. I was in a small bookstore by the river, looking for something to fill the silence Lara left behind. Her absence had become an echo. I heard it in laughter, in footsteps, in the rustle of turning pages. That's when I saw her. She stood in the corner, flipping through a poetry book. Same hair, same delicate neck, same posture that whispered elegance even in stillness. For a moment, I thought my grief had finally made me delusional. "Lara?" I whispered before I could stop myself. She turned and the air shifted. Her eyes, they were the same shape, the same color, but they didn't hold the same weight. Where Lara's gaze was heavy with memory, hers shimmered with mischief. "I'm not her," she said softly, closing the book. "But you're not the first to make that mistake." Her voice, lighter, warmer, carried a kind of music Lara's never did. I stared at her, heart caught between shock and déjà vu. "You're Liana." She extended her hand. The one she doesn't talk about. If guilt had a heartbeat, mine was racing. I didn't know what to say, what to feel. I had mourned Lara like a ghost who chose to haunt me. And now, standing in front of me, was the living shadow of everything she tried to bury. She smiled, watching my confusion unfold. "She told you about me, didn't she?" I hesitated. "She told me you were gone." Her laughter was soft but sharp. "Gone? That's one way to say it." Lara always loved rewriting the truth into something poetic. There it was again, that same name, but laced with bitterness. I realized then that her tone wasn't anger, it was ache, aged and unsaid. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to." "Apologize?" she interrupted. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just loved the version of her that made sense to you." Her words stung because they were too precise, too aware. Like she'd seen this story unfold before. We sat by the window after that, rain starting to fall against the glass, a slow drizzle that blurred everything outside. She ordered black coffee. No sugar, no cream, just like Lara. Except when she drank it, she smiled. She still takes hers bitter, doesn't she? How do you know? I asked. She always did, she said, eyes drifting toward the window. She used to say sweetness made things feel fake. I said bitterness was just truth without disguise. We never agreed on much after that. There was a pause. Then she sighed. She never forgave me. For what? For being the twin who lived. Liana's presence felt like sunlight in a house that had forgotten warmth. She laughed easily, spoke without restraint, and carried a freedom that was almost offensive compared to Lara's quiet grief. Yet beneath that ease, I saw something else, the same shadow lingering behind her smile. We walked for hours that day, along the riverside, through the market, through time that didn't seem to belong to either of us. Every word she spoke peeled back layers of the past Lara had kept sealed. She blames me, Liana said, watching the water flow. Says I ruined her. But the truth is, she ruined herself long before I had the chance. I frowned. She told me you left because of someone. Her jaw tightened. I didn't leave. I was pushed away. She fell in love with someone I introduced her to. He played us both. When she found out, she didn't forgive him. She forgave me less. I stopped walking. You mean, she thought you stole him? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Does it matter now? Her voice trembled, then softened. Lara never understood. Sometimes love isn't about wanting someone, it's about being seen by them. And he saw me. Once. Briefly. That was enough to make her hate me forever. Her confession lingered in the air like a wound that refused to close. Over the next few weeks, we met often. By accident, at first, but fate is never that clumsy, and heart's never that innocent. She'd text me lines from the poetry she read, small fragments that felt both healing and dangerous. Some faces look like forgiveness, others look like the reason we need it. And I'd find myself replying, even when I knew I shouldn't. We talked about Lara often. Too often. I think a part of her wanted to understand what kind of woman her sister had become, and part of me wanted to understand which one of them I had really loved. One evening, we sat in that same bookstore, lights dim, rain tapping against the roof. She leaned closer, tracing the rim of her cup. She used to paint me, Liana said, when we were kids, always in colors that didn't belong to me. Blue, gray, violet. She'd never use red. Said it didn't suit me. Why? She looked up, eyes glinting. Because red was hers. Passion, rage, pain. She wanted to keep them all. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "But maybe red suits me better now." There was danger in her. Not the kind that threatens, but the kind that tempts. She was everything Lara wasn't. Expressive, chaotic, alive. And yet, every time she smiled, it felt like a question I couldn't answer. One night, she asked me, "Do I make you uncomfortable?" I hesitated. "You remind me of someone I'm still trying to forget." "That's not fair," she said softly. "You don't get to punish me for her ghost." "I'm not," I lied. "Yes, you are," she whispered. "You're trying to love me through her." Her words pierced something raw inside me. I wanted to argue to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't, because part of me was seeing her as a continuation, not a beginning. And yet, the way she looked at me, not as a memory, but as a man standing right there, made me want to believe otherwise. The more time I spent with Liana, the more I felt like I was trespassing in a forbidden dream. She laughed at jokes Lara would have ignored. She danced in the rain, dragged me along when I resisted. She'd hum old songs and forget the lyrics halfway, then make up new ones on the spot. But sometimes, when the laughter faded, I caught her staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, half longing, half guilt. One night I finally asked, "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" She smiled sadly. "Because I'm wondering if you'd still look at me this way if she were standing next to me." Her words turned the air cold. "I'm not her," she continued, "but you still hesitate before saying my name." "I don't." "Yes, you do." She took my hand, her thumb brushing my wrist. "You say it softly, like it's borrowed." Her touch burned, but not painfully. It felt like truth. I pulled away, breath unsteady. "Liana, this isn't love," she finished for me. "I know, but maybe it is what love looks like when it is too scared to call itself that." And before I could speak again, she kissed me. It wasn't the kind of kiss that begins something. It was the kind that breaks something open. For a heartbeat, I forgot which twin I was holding. Her lips tasted like rain and salt, sorrow and defiance in equal measure. But when she pulled away, there were tears in her eyes. "Now she'll really hate me," she whispered, and I realized she wasn't talking about Lara finding out. She was talking about herself. Because every time she tried to step out of her sister's shadow, she ended up standing right back in it. After that night, I couldn't sleep. Everywhere I went, I saw double. Every face I remembered blurred into another. I tried writing her a message, something simple like "we need to talk," but deleted it. I didn't know which name to type. Days passed. Then one morning, I found a letter taped to my door. No envelope, just a folded page that smelled faintly of rain and perfume. Inside, in delicate handwriting, it said, "Don't tell her you met me. She doesn't want to know I still exist." Some secrets are meant to stay unspoken, even if they whisper themselves in your sleep. No signature, just a small red mark at the bottom, a smudge shaped like a fingerprint. I never told Lara, not because I wanted to protect Liana, but because I didn't hate to know who I was protecting anymore. But secrets are fragile things. They don't wait to be exposed. They fracture even when held gently. And this one, the secret of loving a woman who looked like the ghost of another, was already beginning to crack. Because every time I saw a reflection, in a window, in a puddle, in a photograph, I couldn't tell which twin was looking back at me. That night I dreamed of the painting again, the one of two identical women, one smiling, one crying. But this time, the canvas was burning. And as the flames rose, both women turned toward me, whispering the same thing. "You can't love both." I woke up shaking. And somewhere, beneath the noise of my racing heart, I heard it, her voice, faint but certain, echoing from memory. Maybe we all have a twin inside us, one who loves and one who ruins. This time, I wasn't sure which one I had become. They say silence can heal. But in love, silence mutates. It becomes suspicion. It grows teeth, claws, and questions that you can't answer fast enough. With Lara, it started quietly. At first, she would pause mid-conversation when my phone buzzed. Her eyes would flick toward the screen, then back to mine, pretending she hadn't noticed. She'd smile, too politely, and say, "You're busy these days." The tone was calm. The words were harmless. But something had shifted. Love, once soft and certain, began to feel like a cross-examination. We used to sit together for hours without talking. She loved silence back then, said it was the purest form of understanding. Now, the same silence felt like a test. Every quiet second became an accusation waiting for proof. When I told her I'd been at the bookstore, her smile faltered. "The one by the river?" I hesitated. "Yeah." Her gaze turned distant. "Funny. That's where I used to meet her." Her. Liana. The name hung between us like a ghost we both refused to acknowledge. I looked away, pretending to check my messages. But she saw. She always saw. That is the thing about people who, we've been betrayed. Even imagined betrayal looks real enough to bleed. Weeks passed, and Lara changed in ways too subtle to notice at first. She started dressing differently. Softer colors, lighter makeup, as if trying to erase something about herself. Her laughter came less often, and when it did, it sounded practiced. One evening, we were driving home from a late dinner. The rain was falling hard, the city lights melting into the windshield. She stared out the window, her reflection fractured by raindrops. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked suddenly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Who?" Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "You know who." I didn't answer, because denial, I've learned, sometimes feels crueler than confession. She sighed. "You're quiet." "I just don't know what you want me to say." "Say something true." The car filled with the sound of rain, and I realized there are moments when truth itself feels like betrayal, not because it's wrong, but because it's late. That night, when I dropped her off, she didn't look back before closing the door. I watched her walk inside, her shadow bending across the light of the porch. I sat there for a long time, rain drumming on the roof, her perfume fading from the seat beside me. When I finally looked down, I noticed something small glinting near the gearshift. A single earring, silver, delicate, shaped like a teardrop. Not Lara's. I froze. It was identical to the one Liana had worn the last time I saw her. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my mind spinning. How had it ended up here? When? Then, like a cruel echo, I remembered the day she'd leaned into my car window outside the bookstore, laughing about a poem I didn't understand. She'd brushed her hair back. The earring had caught the light. I must have swallowed the truth whole that night, thinking it would dissolve with guilt. But truth never dissolves. It waits. The next day, Lara showed up at my apartment. She was calm, too calm. Her silence felt rehearsed, like a speech she'd been practicing. "Can I borrow your car?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure." She smiled faintly. "Thanks." When she returned a few hours later, her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't say a word as she walked past me into the living room. Then she held out her hand, and there it was, the earring, dangling between her fingers like a verdict. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. She placed it on the table gently, almost reverently, as if laying flowers on a grave. Her eyes met mine, steady, unreadable. "You finally chose her." It wasn't a question, it was an ending. The silence that followed was unbearable. She didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't demand explanations. Because sometimes when someone's been waiting to be betrayed, your innocence just feels like a delay. "Lara," I said, stepping closer. "Listen to me." But she shook her head. "Don't. I don't want to hear you lie trying to make it sound beautiful." Her voice cracked slightly, and that hurt more than anger ever could. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back as if my touch burned. "You think I don't recognize it?" she said softly. "That look in your eyes when you talk about her? You may not have touched her again, but you've been with her every time you thought of me." Her words sliced through me, quiet but merciless. "Lara, she came to me." She laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. She always does. And you always let her in." I wanted to scream that it wasn't like that, that I'd tried to forget, that I loved her, but she wasn't listening anymore. She walked to the door, paused, and said the last thing I ever expected. "She wins again." And just like that, she was gone. That night, I sat alone in the dark, the earring glinting on the table under the dim lamp. I picked it up, turning it over in my palm. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. A small drop of water, maybe from the rain, maybe from me, fell onto the silver and rolled down like a tear. I wanted to throw it away, to erase the evidence of everything that wasn't my fault but still felt like my sin. But I couldn't. Because some symbols don't leave. They linger to remind you that love, once doubted, can never return untouched. Days passed without a word from her. I texted, called, drove past her apartment just to see the faint glow of her curtains. But she didn't answer. Silence became my punishment. It filled the spaces where her laughter used to be. It haunted every morning when I made coffee for 2 out of habit. And every night I'd catch myself replaying her last words. You finally chose her. The cruelest part was how wrong and right they both felt. Because no matter how much I denied it, part of me had chosen Liana. Not in love, but in attention, in memory, in the way I kept her alive through guilt. And in doing so, I'd lost Lara. Not to her sister, but to the mirror they shared. Weeks later, I went back to the river, the place where everything seemed to begin and end. The bookstore was closed for renovation. The rain had returned, steady and familiar, as if mocking me with repetition. I sat on a bench by the water, pulling my coat tighter, and took the earring out of my pocket. I'd been carrying it ever since, like a secret I couldn't bury. The silver caught the streetlight, reflecting my face in its curve. Distorted, divided. That's when I realized something cruelly poetic. Maybe love isn't destroyed by lies. Maybe it's destroyed by reflections, by the things we see in each other that we refuse to see in ourselves. Lara had always said I loved too quietly. But maybe quiet love feels like deceit when someone's still haunted by betrayal, and maybe she didn't see me anymore. She saw him, the man who betrayed her sister. History wasn't repeating itself, it was rewriting itself, with me as the villain this time. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked. Sudden, sharp, final. I thought of Lara's painting, the one of 2 women, one smiling, one crying. But in my mind, they weren't standing side by side anymore. They were merging, bleeding into one another until I couldn't tell which was which. Maybe that's what love between twins is. A war without sides. And I had stepped right into the crossfire. When I finally stood up to leave, the river was swelling, dark and restless. I took the earring in my hand one last time, kissed it softly, and dropped it into the water. It sank quickly, swallowed by the current. I whispered, "Let it end here." But rivers don't keep secrets. They carry them downstream, where they find new listeners. And I knew, no matter how far I tried to run, that small piece of silver would glitter in my memory forever, reflecting 2 faces I could no longer tell apart. I went home that night and stared at my phone, at the empty message thread with her name at the top. Finally, I typed 3 words I knew she'd never read. It wasn't me. Then I deleted them. Because maybe the truth didn't matter anymore. Some lies, even when unspoken, are still believed. And some loves, even when innocent, are still punished. The next morning, sunlight broke through the window for the first time in days. But it didn't feel like light. It felt like exposure. The kind of light that reveals what you've tried to keep hidden. I stood there, holding her empty mug, realizing something I never dared to say aloud. Maybe I didn't lose Lara to her twin. Maybe I lost her to the reflection she'd built inside her own heart. The one that whispered, "He'll hurt you too." And no matter how loudly I tried to love her, that voice always spoke louder. That was the day I learned. Love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies from the belief in betrayal. And once that seed is planted, nothing pure grows again. Rain has a strange way of finding you when you're already drowning. That night, I ran after her, barefoot, soaked, desperate, as if distance could be undone by will alone. Her figure blurred through the downpour, a ghost in a storm that felt rehearsed by fate itself. "Lara!" I shouted. My voice cracked against the thunder. She didn't stop, didn't even turn around. I caught up to her near the edge of the street, where the lamplight flickered like a dying heartbeat. Her hair was plastered to her face, her dress clinging to her skin. She looked like a memory I wasn't ready to lose yet. "Please," I gasped, "just listen." She finally stopped, but her eyes, they weren't angry, they were resigned, like someone watching the end of a movie they'd already seen too many times. "You could have denied it better," she whispered. The words hit harder than any accusation, because in them was the cruelest kind of disbelief, the kind that says, "I wanted you to lie, just so I could keep loving you." "I'm not lying," I said. My voice trembled, not from guilt but from the fear that truth meant nothing now. She tilted her head, studying me with the calm precision of someone dissecting a wound. "Maybe not," she said softly, "but you're not innocent either." The thunder rolled again, as if agreeing. We walked back to her apartment in silence. I followed her upstairs, dripping onto her wooden floors, leaving a trail of apology. She didn't ask me to leave. She didn't tell me to stay. When she lit a candle, the flame flickered weakly against the rain streaking down her window. On the table lay a stack of old letters, the ones I had written her during our first year together, words that once made her smile. Now, she looked at them like evidence. "You kept these," I said quietly. She nodded. "I used to think they proved how much you loved me, but maybe they just prove how much I wanted to believe you did." Then, without hesitation, she picked one up, the first one I'd ever given her, and held it over the candle. I lunged forward. "Lara, no!" But the paper curled instantly, blackening at the edges. The flame ate through my words like they'd never mattered. "Stop!" I pleaded. She dropped another into the fire, then another. The smell of burning paper filled the air, sweet, bitter, final. I watched our history turn to ash one sentence at a time. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. My voice was breaking, small, almost childlike. Her eyes glistened with rain and tears, and I couldn't tell which was which. "Because if I don't burn them," she said, "I'll read them again, and I'll forgive you again." Her voice shook. "And I can keep forgiving someone who doesn't even know what he's guilty of." I took a step closer. "Then tell me what I did." She looked up, finally meeting my eyes. "You let her into your story." The words silenced everything. Even the rain seemed to pause. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Liana was a shadow, not a presence, that whatever she saw, whatever she thought she knew, was just an illusion. But how do you fight a reflection? Every truth I could offer sounded like a lie shaped too carefully. Every denial sounded rehearsed. "I never—" She cut me off. "Don't. I already decided which version of you to remember." Then she picked up a sketchbook from the shelf, the one filled with drawings of her, the way she smiled when she read poetry, the way her hands trembled when she reached for coffee, the way sunlight touched her shoulders like it was shy. She looked at me once more, not with love, but with farewell, and dropped the entire book into the fire. Flames leapt higher, golden and merciless. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Watching her burn the things I made for her felt like watching her erase me, line by line, stroke by stroke. In that flickering light, I saw two versions of us, the lovers we used to be and the strangers we had become. The fire made her face glow, beautiful, cruel, untouchable. For a moment, I almost thought she looked like her twin, and maybe that was the point. Maybe she wanted to become the reflection that ruined her. "I don't want truth," she said softly. "Truth doesn't comfort anyone. Pain does. Pain explains why we leave, why we change, why we stop waiting." Her voice cracked again. "So, let me hurt, at least for something that feels real." I stepped forward until I was close enough to feel the heat of the fire between us. "It was always real," I said, "even now." She laughed, a hollow, broken sound that echoed through the room. "If it was," she whispered, "then why do I feel like the other woman in my own story?" The candlelight shimmered in her eyes, gold and wet and furious. She turned away before I could answer. For a while, the only sound was the rain and the faint hiss of paper dying. I stared at the ashes gathering in the tray, thinking how love ends like this, not with shouting or goodbye, but with quiet destruction. Everything that once meant something now existed only in smoke. She leaned against the window, staring out at the storm. "I used to think betrayal had a face," she said, "but now I know it's a reflection, one that looks just like yours." She turned to me, her expression unreadable, "And maybe just like mine." Then she blew out the candle. Darkness. Only the smell of smoke and the faint echo of everything we used to be. I stood there, motionless as the last ember died. "Lara," I whispered, "you're making a mistake." Her silhouette shifted. "Maybe, but at least it'll be mine." Then, without looking at me, she added, "You can go now." Her tone was soft, but it cut like glass. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. There was nothing left to defend. As I turned to leave, thunder cracked again. Sharp, like the universe clapping for an ending I didn't want. Behind me, she said the last words I'd hear from her for months. "Next time, when someone accuses you, try to look surprised. It's more believable." I stepped outside, into the rain that hadn't stopped since the night she found the earring. It drenched me, washed the smoke off my skin, but not her words. Those burned deeper. I walked without direction, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and blue. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, muffled by the storm. I thought of the first night I met her, standing before that painting of two identical women, one smiling, one crying. "Back then," she said, "maybe we all have a twin inside us, one who loves and one who ruins." I finally understood what she meant. She had become both, and I was just the reflection she broke while trying to punish her own. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. The darkness felt honest. I opened my drawer and found the last thing she hadn't destroyed, a single photograph of us at the gallery. She was laughing. I was looking at her. The world had been simple then. Now it looked like evidence too. I placed it on the table beside my sketch pencils and watched a drop of rain fall from my hair onto her face in the picture. It blurred her smile, almost like she was fading again. That's when it hit me. She didn't want justice. She wanted justification. If I was guilty, she could leave without looking back. If I wasn't, she'd have to face her own reflection, and that was something she couldn't forgive. So she made me the villain, not because I was, but because she needed me to be. The storm raged outside until dawn. By morning, the city was quiet again, washed but not cleansed. I went to the balcony and watched the sun rise behind the clouds. For the first time, I noticed something strange in the light, a kind of mourning. I whispered her name once, softly, just to hear it dissolve into the air. Lara. It didn't echo. It didn't return. Just disappeared, like everything else she left behind. That was the day I stopped chasing truth. Because some truths, done to save you, they just keep you tied to someone who's already left. And love, when it ends like this, doesn't ask for closure. It demands silence. It was a Sunday when she found me, the kind of day that pretends to be peaceful but carries old storms in the air. The rain had finally stopped, yet the city still smelled of thunder and endings. I was sitting outside a small cafe, sketchbook open, trying to draw anything that didn't look like her. That's when I heard a voice that froze the world around me. Still drawing ghosts? I looked up, and for a heartbeat, I thought time had folded back on itself. Lara. Or so I thought. But no, the smile was different. Softer. Real. Liana, I breathed. She stood there in a pale coat, her hair undone by the wind, eyes carrying the same light I used to fall into, only warmer, less guarded. She gave a small laugh. "You look like you've seen one." "I almost did," I murmured. She sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't ordered. The silence between us wasn't tense, just fragile, like a memory being handled too gently. "She thinks we're together," she said finally. The words sliced through the quiet like a confession. I looked up sharply. "Lara?" She nodded. "Yeah, She told our mother she caught us, that we've been seeing each other. I stared at her, the words refusing to settle. But that's a lie? She finished, smiling bitterly. Maybe, but it's one she believes. Her eyes lowered. Maybe that's how she wants it. For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. It made no sense, yet it did. It was exactly the kind of punishment Lara would choose. Poetic, painful, and irreversible. She wants me to be guilty, I said quietly. Liana shrugged, her smile fading. Maybe she needs you to be. Otherwise, she has to admit she pushed you away. I looked at her. Really looked. Same eyes, same voice, same curve of a frown that could undo me. And yet, she wasn't her. She was everything Lara had built walls against. Warmth, ease, forgiveness. I hated that I noticed. We started talking. About art, about books, about the weight of being mistaken for someone you used to love. She told me how it felt to grow up as the second reflection. How Lara always had to win first. The prize, the praise, the love. She's always been afraid of losing what she never really had, Liana said one evening, her voice soft, even when it was never a competition. There was a sadness in her that mirrored my own, the kind of sorrow that doesn't shout, it sighs. I found comfort in it, and that was the danger. We met again, then again, once by the river, once at the gallery where it all began, once at my apartment where the air still smelled faintly of her sister as perfume, no matter how much I tried to erase it. Each time, the conversation stretched a little longer, the silence between us a little warmer. There were moments she'd tilt her head and laugh at something I said, and for an instant, my chest would ache, because I'd seen that exact smile before, but in another life, on another face. And every time she brushed my hand, once accidentally, then intentionally, I felt both comfort and guilt rise in equal measure, because her touch felt like healing, but her name felt like sin. One night we walked together after dinner. The city lights were trembling on the wet pavement, reflecting like fractured stars. She said, "Do you ever stop thinking about her?" I hesitated. "I try to." "Does it work?" "No." She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Then you're not ready to forgive her yet." "I don't think I ever will," I said. She stopped walking. "Then maybe you're not ready to love again either." I looked at her then, really looked, the way her hair caught the streetlight, the way her eyes softened when she said my name, and I realized something cruel. She was the image of peace that Lara had always refused to be, and that peace terrified me. When we reached my door that night, she didn't leave. She lingered, half inside, half out, like she was testing whether the world would forgive her for staying. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know." She stepped closer anyway. The air between us pulsed. Grief, longing, memory, all tangled in a silence too intimate to name. Her fingers brushed mine again. This time, neither of us moved away. It wasn't passion. It wasn't hunger. It was recognition. Two people broken by the same person, finally seeing the same scar reflected back. Her voice trembled. "She'll hate me for this." I whispered. "She already does." And then she kissed me, gently, fearfully, like a confession neither of us wanted to make. But the moment it happened, something inside me fractured. Because behind my closed eyes, I didn't see her. I saw Lara. The night she burned my letters. The way her hands shook when she said goodbye. The way rain had blurred her tears until I couldn't tell them apart. I pulled back, breathless. "Liana." She didn't move. "I know," she whispered. "It's her, isn't it?" My silence was an answer. She smiled sadly, tears gathering in her eyes. "I thought maybe if I held you, she'd stop hating me." She stepped back, arms folding around herself as if to contain what she already knew couldn't be contained. "I wanted to prove her wrong," she said softly. "To show her you weren't what she thought. But maybe she was right. maybe you were hers, even after she left. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Don't, she said. Not unless you can promise you're seeing me this time. I couldn't, because I wasn't. I was staring at her but mourning someone else. The realization was sharp, almost merciful in its clarity. I'm sorry, I whispered. I thought maybe we could fix each other. She smiled through her tears. We can't fix what we didn't break. Then she turned and walked into the night. And I stood there, in the doorway, under the same storm that had started everything, realizing that grief, when shared, doesn't divide. It multiplies. Days passed, but her absence didn't feel like loss. It felt like déjà vu. Two sisters, two mirrors. Two chances to get it right, and both ending the same way. Me, alone, standing in the aftermath of something I couldn't name. I went back to my sketches again. The lines came out shaky. Every portrait looked like her. Both of them. One smiling, one crying. The same painting from the gallery. I tore the page out, stared at it for a long time, then set it on fire in the sink. The paper curled and blackened, and the smoke rose, smelling faintly like perfume and regret. I whispered, "You win, Lara." But even as I said it, I realized I didn't know which sister I was talking to anymore. A week later, a letter arrived at my door. No name on the envelope, no address, just 2 words on the front. For him. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a sketch I hadn't drawn. It was of me. My face, half in shadow, half in light, and behind me, 2 silhouettes of women, blurred and identical. At the bottom, written in delicate handwriting, "She'll never forgive me, but at least now you'll know I did." No signature, but I didn't need one. I folded the paper carefully, placed it in my sketchbook, and closed it. Because some truths don't need to be said out loud. They just need to be seen, like the reflection in a broken mirror. And maybe that's what this story had always been. Not about love, not about betrayal, but about 2 women who couldn't even stop living through each other. And the man who learned too late that reflections can love you back. That night, I dreamed of them both, standing before the same painting at the gallery, one smiling, one crying. But this time, when I looked closer, I realized the one smiling wasn't Lara anymore. It was Liana, and maybe that was her forgiveness, or maybe it was my punishment. They say some weddings are beginnings. Ours felt like an ending written in cursive, quiet, deliberate, irreversible. When I proposed to Liana, I didn't call it love. I called it closure. We were sitting by the river that had witnessed every version of my downfall. The confessions, the accusations, the storm that took her sister away. The water was calm that evening, rippling like a heartbeat that didn't know whether to keep going. She looked at me when I asked, not with joy, not even surprise, but with a kind of exhausted understanding. "Closure," she repeated, tasting the word. "Yes," I said, "for both of us." She smiled faintly. "You really think marrying me will make her forgive you?" I hesitated. "No, but maybe it'll make her forget." Liana looked away, toward the horizon, where the sky was turning the color of old bruises. "She won't forget," she whispered. "She'll just call it proof." And yet, a month later, she said yes, not because she loved me more, but because she loved her sister less. The wedding was small, almost secret. No church, no music, no vows. Just a handful of witnesses, a rain that refused to stop, and the sound of water tapping against the old chapel windows like a heartbeat trying to get out. I wore gray. She wore ivory. Not white, she'd insisted. "White is for beginnings," she said. "We're not starting anything. We're finishing it." When the officiant asked if we wanted to say something to each other, I shook my head. No words were left that hadn't already been used against us, so we stood in silence, hands trembling slightly as we exchanged rings that felt more like promises of endurance than love. Outside, thunder rolled, soft, distant, familiar. It was the same sound that had followed me since the night Lara burned everything I ever wrote for her. Afterward, people said it was beautiful, minimalist, intimate. But to me, it felt like standing inside a grave that hadn't yet been filled. As guests whispered their goodbyes, I noticed an empty chair in the back row, one we'd reserved out of habit, though neither of us dared say whose it was for. It stayed empty until the rain grew heavier, turning the world outside into liquid glass. And then, just before we cut the cake we didn't want, someone entered the chapel. I knew it before I saw her. The air changed. Heavier, colder, sharper. Lara. She stood at the entrance, the white light from outside framing her like a ghost that never learned how to rest. She wasn't dressed like a guest. She was dressed like a bride. White dress. No veil. No jewelry. Her hair was damp from the rain, clinging to her face like fragments of another life. Her hands were empty, but her eyes carried everything she'd never said. For a moment, the room stopped breathing. Even the priest froze mid-motion, as if waiting for some divine permission to continue. She didn't move closer, just stood there, trembling slightly, like someone who'd walked into her own funeral by mistake. And maybe she had. Liana was the first to move. Her lips tightened, her body stiffening with a mix of fear and defiance. "Lara," she whispered. Her twin didn't answer. Her gaze found mine, not accusing, not pleading, just searching, as if trying to recognize the man she once loved in the one who now stood beside her sister. "Why are you here?" Liana's voice cracked. Lara smiled faintly, but it wasn't warmth. It was grief disguised as grace. "To see how silence looks in white," she said softly. Her words sank into the room like a curse. The guests began to shift uncomfortably. Some whispered, some left quietly through the side door. The rain outside grew louder, like applause for a tragedy no one wanted to admit was real. I took a step forward. "Lara." She flinched slightly. The sound of my voice still carried history, pain, something she couldn't bear. "Don't," she said. "Not today." Her gaze fell to the rings on her hands. She laughed under her breath, a sound so fragile it almost broke. "I thought maybe you'd pick a different day," she whispered. "But of course you didn't. You always did love irony." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked up, her eyes shining. "It's the same date we met." The memory hit me like a slap. The art gallery, the painting, the reflection of two women, one smiling, one crying. That same date, years ago. I hadn't planned it. Or maybe unconsciously, I had. Maybe a part of me wanted the past to witness what became of us. She took another step closer, her heels echoing in the hollow space between us. "Do you remember what you told me that night?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "You said, maybe we all have a twin inside us, one who loves and one who ruins." She smiled sadly. "And you said, I'd choose the one who loves." Her eyes darkened. "Looks like you changed your mind." Liana moved between us then, voice trembling. "Don't do this here, Lara." Her sister's gaze flicked to her and something shifted. Anger, sadness, envy, everything tangled in one unspoken ache. "Here," she said quietly. "You mean in the place where you married the man who used to draw my face like it was prayer?" Liana's lips trembled. "You left him." "I had to," Lara whispered. "I left him so I wouldn't have to share him." She looked at me again. "And now look, I lost him anyway." The silence that followed was suffocating. Rain hit the stained glass like applause from heaven. Relentless, mocking, divine. She turned as if to leave, then stopped at the door. "Do you love her?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because the truth felt like betrayal in every direction. Liana looked down. Lara nodded, a tear escaping down her cheek. "That's what I thought," she said softly. "You don't love either of us. You just love what we reflect." She gave a small, broken smile. "Congratulations, by the way. The mirror suits you." Then she stepped out into the rain. For a moment, I almost followed her. My body moved before my mind caught up, but Liana's hand caught my wrist. Firm, shaking. "Let her go," she said. I stopped. Outside, Lara was already halfway down the steps, her white dress bleeding into the gray street, dissolving into the storm. She didn't look back, and I didn't chase her this time. Maybe because I knew chasing her again would only lead me back to the same place, standing in the rain, watching her walk away, carrying both my truth and my guilt. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Liana and I sat in the empty chapel. The candles had burned down to small, tired flames. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't comforting anymore. It was the kind that filled the lungs and made breathing feel optional. Finally, she whispered, "She'll never forgive me." I looked at her, her makeup smudged, her hands trembling. "Maybe she doesn't have to." She nodded faintly, tears spilling. "And you'll never forget her." That wasn't a question. I didn't answer, because she was right. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. Gentle, persistent, endless. We stepped out together, the wet air clinging to our skin. The city lights shimmered on puddles like broken stars. I looked up at the sky, wondering if somewhere Lara was doing the same, looking at the same clouds, hating the same silence. Liana slipped her arm through mine. "We'll make it work," she whispered. I nodded, but the words felt hollow, because some marriages are built on love. Ours was built on grief. That night, when we returned home, the apartment felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by echoes. Her laughter still lingered in the walls. The scent of her still lived in the fabric of the couch. Every object I touched felt borrowed. Liana placed her wedding ring on the table, next to the sketches I hadn't yet burned. "We'll have to start over," she said quietly. I stared at the ring. The circle, endless, perfect. A symbol of something we both knew couldn't hold. "You ever notice," I murmured, "how rain sounds the same, no matter whose name you whisper under it?" She looked at me, and for the first time since we began, I saw it. The same loneliness that had destroyed her sister, now blooming quietly in her too. I lay awake long after she fell asleep, listening to the sound of rain against the window. It was the same rhythm that once carried my heartbreak, and hers. Maybe that's why Lara came, not to ruin our wedding, but to make sure silence had witnesses. Because silence, in the end, was what tied us all together. Me, Liana, and the woman who couldn't forgive. A triangle drawn in grief, sealed in rain, framed in memory. And somewhere between all that, I realized, love didn't die. It just changed its name. There are moments that don't need words to destroy you. Just a look. Just a single look that turns everything you once believed into smoke. That's what it was. The look that broke me. I saw her across the chapel as the priest began to speak, his voice trembling with old grace and new sins. She stood in the back, drenched in rainlight, eyes locked on me. Not with hatred, not with fury, but with something far worse. Regret. It wasn't the kind that begged for forgiveness. It was the kind that arrived too late, carrying the weight of what could have been. And when I said, "I do," she flinched. Just slightly, as if the words had been meant for her all along. Her twin, Liana, stood beside me, hands trembling beneath her bouquet of white roses, the kind Lara used to paint when she was sad. I remember thinking how wrong everything felt. The flowers, the light, the silence, even the rain outside seemed to hesitate, as if unsure whether to bless or condemn us. Every sound in the room grew louder. The scraping of chairs, the drip of water from umbrellas, the creak of the wooden floor under our weight. But all I could hear was her breath. Shallow, steady, breaking. Lara didn't cry. She didn't storm out. She just looked. And that look, that quiet, burning look, said everything words had failed to. In that moment, I wanted to stop the ceremony, to throw away the ring, to run to her, to tell her that every sketch, every letter, every sleepless night still belonged to her. That I never wanted this. Not the silence, not the revenge, not the ghost of a life we were both pretending to bury. But I didn't move. Because pride is louder than love when you've been wounded by it. And revenge, once set in motion, doesn't pause for mercy. So I stood there, a man marrying the wrong twin for the right reason, and losing the right woman for the wrong one. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, the chapel erupted in polite applause. But to me, it sounded like thunder, a cruel echo of the night she burned my letters, my drawings, my confessions. I glanced toward the back, but she was already gone. The space she had occupied felt colder, emptier. It was as if she had never existed, and yet everything in me screamed her name. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate us, smiling strangers with hollow words. Beautiful couple. Perfect day. May your love last forever. I smiled when I had to, nodded when expected, but every word felt like salt pressed into an open wound. Liana held onto my arm, smiling for the photographs that would later haunt us both. She looked radiant, not in love, but in defiance, as if by wearing the dress, she could erase her sister's shadow. And yet, even as the camera flashed, I saw her glance toward the door, the one Lara had walked through moments before, because we both knew this wasn't victory, this was surrender. When the guests left, the silence that followed was unbearable. The rain had stopped, but the world still smelled of it. Wet soil, old flowers, the residue of something washed away but not forgiven. I stood near the altar, staring at the place where she had been. That single patch of floor felt sacred now, a wound that no prayer could close. Liana approached quietly. Her dress rustled like a sigh. "She came," she said softly. I nodded. "I saw her," she continued. "She looked at you like—" She paused, then forced a brittle smile. Like she was still waiting. I said nothing, because she was right. She was still waiting, for a truth I no longer had the courage to give. That night, when we reached home, I found one of Lara's old sketches tucked between the pages of a book I hadn't opened in months. It was of the same painting we saw the day we met. Two identical women, one smiling, one crying. Except this time, both were looking at each other, and both were bleeding from their eyes. She had written a line beneath it in the handwriting I knew better than my own. "We become the ones we accuse." I read it over and over until the words blurred. Maybe she was right. Maybe, by marrying her twin, I'd become the very reflection she once feared I'd fall for. The version of myself that hurt her just enough to make her story true. Liana watched me from the doorway, her wedding ring glinting faintly in the dim light. "Do you regret it already?" she asked. I folded the sketch, tucking it into my pocket. "No," I said. "I regret what came before it." She sighed, stepping closer. "You think she'll ever forgive you?" I met her gaze. "Do you?" Her lips parted, then closed again. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I know she'll never forgive me." And in that single sentence I saw the fracture, the quiet war that had always existed between them, long before I entered the picture. Two mirrors, both cracked differently, each one reflecting the same ache. Weeks passed. The world kept moving, but I didn't. Kept moving, but I didn't. Our house felt like a museum, filled with things that belonged to someone else's happiness. Sometimes I caught Liana staring out the window, her fingers tracing raindrops down the glass. And I wondered if she, too, was haunted by that look. The look her sister gave me. The look that followed us home, that slept between us, that never faded no matter how much light we turned on. I tried to paint again, to lose myself in color and canvas, but every time I lifted the brush, it betrayed me. The face that appeared wasn't Liana's, it was hers. Lara, with her quiet sadness, her hesitant smile, her eyes that could forgive and wound in the same breath. I painted her 100 times that month, each portrait softer, sadder, less alive, as if with every stroke I was erasing her from memory, and yet immortalizing her in silence. One night, Liana walked in and saw them, a room filled with her sister's face. She didn't speak. She just stood there, trembling, staring at the walls. Finally, she said, "You didn't marry me. You married what she left behind." Then she walked out, and I didn't stop her. Days turned to week. Her absence became my penance. I often wondered if Lara ever thought about that moment, the instant our eyes met during the ceremony. If she replayed it the way I did, every night before sleep, like a wound that refused to close. I imagined her standing in front of the mirror, trying to hate the reflection that still loved me. Maybe she succeeded. Maybe she didn't. All I knew was this. When I said "I do," a part of her broke, but a part of me died too. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it ends in silence, in a single look that says everything words cannot bear. And that look, the one she gave me that day, wasn't just heartbreak. It was a farewell disguised as recognition. She saw me, the man she loved, and the stranger he became. And maybe, just maybe, she forgave me in that silence. Not because I deserved it, but because she needed to stop bleeding. That night, I took off my ring and placed it beside the sketch. The storm had returned outside, gentle this time, like a lullaby for sins that could never be undone. And I whispered her name, not loud enough for the world to hear, but just enough for the silence to remember. Lara. The word tasted like rain and regret, and for the first time since the wedding, I let myself cry. Not for the love I lost, but for the man I had to become to lose it. Love doesn't disappear. It just rewinds, quietly, painfully, until all that's left are echoes of what once was. Marriage didn't heal me. It only made the ache more articulate. I thought I could rewrite my story with a different name, a different face. But every time I tried to hold her, the past reached out between us, cold, invisible, merciless. Liana tried. God, she tried. She filled the house with light, laughter, soft music that used to make her sister smile. But in every corner, I still saw Lara. In the way the curtains swayed, the way rain gathered on the window, the way silence lingered too long. The walls remembered. And so did I. Our days became performances of love. We smiled for photographs, clinked glasses at dinners, pretended that affection could be inherited like a family heirloom. But when night came and the lights dimmed, truth took its seat beside us. Her laughter, once sincere, began to sound rehearsed, and my silence, once noble, began to sound cruel. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me as if she were searching for her sister in my eyes. And I'd look back, realizing I was doing the same. We were two ghosts wearing the wrong bodies, trying to convince ourselves that grief could be love if we just believed hard enough. I remember one evening, late winter, when the fireplace had gone out and the room was swallowed by half light. She sat by the window, her hair cascading over her shoulder, shadows tracing the tired lines beneath her eyes. "Do you ever miss her?" she asked suddenly. The question hung there, quiet, trembling, already knowing the answer. I swallowed. "Every day." She nodded. "I know. I see it in you." I turned to her, guilt burning beneath my ribs. "I never meant to hurt you." She smiled, not bitterly, but with the sad grace of someone who finally stopped pretending. "I think you did mean it," she said softly. "Just not this much." That night, she didn't sleep beside me. She stayed by the window until dawn, watching the snow fall like dust over everything we had failed to build. When I woke, the first thing I saw was her reflection. Not her face, but her reflection. And for a second, my heart jolted, thinking it was Lara again. That's when I realized how far I'd fallen. I wasn't just haunted by memory. I was in love with a ghost. Days blurred into months. We stopped pretending to fix things. The house turned cold, not from winter, but from withdrawal. Her laughter disappeared first, then her voice, then her presence. But silence doesn't mean peace. It means surrender. Every time she walked past me, it felt like watching someone slowly unlove you, piece by piece, breath by breath. And I couldn't blame her, because she was right. I didn't see her. I saw Lara. In every gesture, every kindness, every flaw, I married a shadow to hurt the light. And in doing so, I doomed us both to flicker out. One night, I came home late. The lights were off, but the air smelled of rain again, the kind that carried memories. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by open sketchbooks, my sketches, of Lara. She had found them all. Every unfinished portrait, every letter I never mailed, every ghost I refused to bury. When I stepped closer, she looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty. "You don't see me," she whispered. "You see her." Her words didn't cut. They dissolved. Because they weren't new. They were the truth I'd been avoiding since the day I said I do. I knelt beside her, trembling. "I tried to forget her," I said. "I thought if I loved you enough." She interrupted with a broken laugh. "Loved me enough?" Her voice cracked. "You never loved me at all. You loved what hurt her." I wanted to deny it, but the silence between us said it for me. She picked up one of the sketches, Lara's face half-finished, her eyes incomplete. "This is who you married," she said. "Not me." Her hand shook as she tore the paper in two. The sound was soft, but it felt like thunder. That night she packed her things. No tears, no argument. Just a quiet resignation. The kind you only see in people who finally realize they can't compete with ghosts. At the door, she turned to me one last time. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "if she feels the same?" I frowned. "Feels what?" "The emptiness," she whispered. "The ache that doesn't stop." And then she was gone. The door closed, and with it, the last sound of warmth left the house. After she left, I sat in the darkness, surrounded by fragments of drawings, paper curling like wilted petals. I realized something cruel. I hadn't lost both sisters. I'd lost myself somewhere between them, between love and guilt, between truth and punishment, between the one who doubted me and the one who paid for it. Weeks later, I returned to the same art gallery where it all began. The same painting still hung there. Two identical women, one smiling, one crying. But I saw something new this time. The one who smiled wasn't happy. She was pretending. And the one who cried wasn't broken. She was honest. Maybe love is like that. A mirror that tells you which version of yourself you've become. I stood there for hours, watching the reflections blur together in the glass. Somewhere between them, I saw myself. A man who thought revenge was healing, and discovered it was just love in reverse. That night, I went home to an empty house. The air felt heavy. Too quiet, too familiar. On the kitchen table, I found a small envelope, sealed with wax. Her handwriting. Not Liana's, Lara's. The postmark was weeks old. My heart stuttered as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, faintly stained with rain. "You married her to hurt me. But I forgave you before you said the words, because I finally understood. You didn't betray me to love her. You betrayed me to punish yourself. And maybe that's worse." At the bottom, one last line. "Some mirrors aren't meant to face each other." I sat there until dawn, the letter trembling in my hands. The rain had returned, soft, persistent, endless. It sounded like her voice. It sounded like everything I'd ever lost, echoing backward through time. Love doesn't die, I realized. It just reverses, turning affection into guilt, memory into punishment, and closure into a curse. And as the storm carried her name against the windows once more, I whispered the only truth left in me. I was never faithful to the living, only to the memory. It had been years, the kind of years that turn old wounds into faint scars you only feel when it rains. I saw her again at a cafe by the coast, where the air tasted of salt and forgotten things. She was sitting by the window, tracing circles on her coffee cup like she used to do when she was thinking too much. For a moment, I thought the years had played a trick on me, that the universe had folded itself just to let our unfinished story breathe again. She looked up, and time stuttered. The same eyes, but quieter now, like a storm that had learned how to live inside itself. She smiled faintly. "You really married her," she said, voice trembling on the edge of something unsaid. I nodded, unable to find a word strong enough to bridge the distance between us. "You really believed I cheated," I finally whispered. She looked down. Her fingers tightened around the cup as if holding it would keep her from falling apart. "I had to," she murmured, "because if I didn't, I'd have to admit I was the jealous one." The truth hung between us, fragile, bare, and almost kind. The sound of waves outside filled the silence we couldn't. I studied her face, searching for the woman who once loved me like I was both her dream and her warning. But she was gone, replaced by someone who had learned how to live without needing to be right anymore. "I thought I was protecting myself," she said quietly, "from being the weaker twin, from being the one who needed you more. And in the end," I replied, "you protected yourself from love." She laughed, soft, broken. "You sound like the man I once accused of lying. And you sound like the woman who once made me believe in forever," I said, almost smiling. There was no bitterness now, just a hollow acceptance that time had done what apologies never could, turned our love into a lesson neither of us could unlearn. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an old, worn envelope. The paper had yellowed, the edges soft from years of being folded and unfolded, carried but never delivered. "I wrote this the night you left," I said, setting it on the table. "I never sent it because I didn't think you'd believe me." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, just one line, written in ink that had faded almost to gray. "You mistook reflection for betrayal." For a long time, she didn't speak. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. They just shimmered, trapped between what was and what could have been. She looked up, her voice barely audible. "That night, I thought you'd look at her the way you looked at me. I thought I'd already lost. You didn't lose," I said softly. "You left before you had to fight." The silence that followed wasn't cruel this time. It was soft, like forgiveness that had taken the scenic route back. She reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of mine. "Do you love her?" she asked. I wanted to lie, to give her peace, but lies were what ruined us in the first place. "I tried," I said truthfully, "but loving her felt like reading your diary through someone else's handwriting." A small, sad smile crossed her lips. "She always envied how you saw me. Maybe that's why she said yes when you asked." "Maybe," I whispered. "Or maybe we both wanted to become what you accused us of." She nodded, tears finally falling. "I ruined us." "No," I said. "You doubted what was real, and I punished you by making it real." The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of seagulls and distant thunder. The rain started again, gentle, almost forgiving. We sat there, two ghosts wrapped in the warmth of a love that had outlived its chance. She folded the letter and placed it back on the table. "Keep it," she said. "I already know how it ends." "I don't," I admitted, "because some endings aren't written. They just fade." When she stood to leave, she hesitated. "You still draw." "Not faces anymore," I said. "Just reflections." She smiled, the same one from the gallery years ago, the one that had trapped me like a promise. "Then maybe that's what we always were," she whispered. "Reflections. One who loved and one who ruined." As she walked away, I watched her silhouette blur against the rain-streaked glass. For the first time in years, I didn't chase her, because some stories aren't meant to be rewritten. They're meant to echo. Outside, the world was gray, and yet, somehow, it didn't feel empty. I picked up the letter she left behind, her reply scrawled in hurried ink on the back of mine. And maybe, in another life, I'll be the reflection that stays. I folded it carefully, placed it in my pocket, and smiled at the cruel poetry of it all. Love had come full circle. Not to heal, but to haunt beautifully. That night, as I walked home through the rain, I realized something quietly devastating. I never stopped loving her. I just learned to love her absence better. The house is quiet now. Not the comforting quiet of a home finally at peace, but the hollow kind that stretches through empty hallways like a shadow with no source. Liana left soon after that final meeting, quietly, without a word of blame. I imagine she knew, somewhere deep down, that this story was never hers to conclude. She tried to build a life with me, but the blueprint was already etched in someone else's hand. I live alone now, surrounded by the echoes of what was. The walls are lined with paintings. Two women, always the same, yet never identical. One smiles, one cries. Some nights I sit before them, staring, and I cannot tell which is which anymore. The lines blur. Shadows shift. The colors bleed together until every brushstroke feels like both accusation and confession. The rain taps on the window tonight, gentle, steady, like a pulse reminding me that the world moves on, even if I do not. I walk from painting to painting, tracing the faces, feeling the ghost of her presence in each curve, each delicate shadow. I wonder if she ever imagined I'd still be here, chained to the reflection she left behind, still haunted by a love I can't name. Maybe love was never about choosing one over the other. Maybe it was about learning the bitterest of truths, that mirrors don't lie, people do. That devotion, once broken, leaves you caring for a memory more than a living heart. That sometimes letting go is the cruelest form of fidelity. And yet, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear her voice. Not the one who stayed beside me, but the one who left, slipping through the corridors of memory like a phantom. Soft, clear, eternal. Maybe we all have a twin inside us, one who loves and one who ruins. I whisper it back into the darkness, though the walls do not answer. Because some truths are meant to linger, some echoes are meant to remain, and some loves, the ones that ruin you as much as they save you, never truly end.